Powered by Riverside.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to You Know What I Like? Theater. This is a theater review podcast of shows that we have seen in the Central Virginia area. Maybe coming to a city near you. We do really like theater. We want to look at it a lot. We have seen a lot of shows. This has been a fun experiment that we've done in the past month, and are going to be continuing into August of 2026. But if you can't read our little blurbs here, if you're listening to this on the podcast, audio only, I'm Bri Lasky, and my guest today is.
I am Glen Williams. You can call me Glen Williams. You could call me C. Glen Williams. Either one is fine.
And you're going to see Glen Williams seeing theater.
Hey!
So Glenn and I have known each other for 20 years.
Mhm.
We have both gone to theater school together at Virginia Tech, so we know a little bit about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I went to New York. They went to LA. And, full disclosure, we're also married, and we go see a lot of theater together.
Yep.
Not really since the pandemic. I have a welcome episode that Glenn has not heard yet, but it describes the impetus for this podcast. But Glenn and I have been going around to each of our local theaters in Central Virginia because there's a ton. There's a ton of talent. And the only requisites were they had to be within 2 hours of our home. And we had to track of what we saw, how much it cost, and what our opinions about it were.
Yeah, and it turns out that there is an awful lot of theater within 2 hours of our home. I was surprised how much there was. Yeah, great theater too.
Yeah, so I think that that's the thing we wanted to bring to light. So our introduction might be a little different every single time. This is our very first episode, so welcome. You're joining us at the very right time, just as we're starting this journey into watching a whole bunch of shows and being inspired by our local talent. And so I'm going to talk about when we went to go see Bent Theater.
Oh boy.
This was July 5th. 6:30 at Dispatch Brewing Company. And Bent Theater is a small improv troupe that tours the area. So this is not the only location you can find them at. I think they said their follow-ups were going to be in Waynesboro, which is really close to us, at a local coffee company. And I think they had a community center. So they're everywhere. But what their focus is long-form, short-form improv, majority comedic, some improv games, and the troupe that we saw were 6 performers and an MC, and I think that that's pretty typical, although this is, full disclosure, our first time seeing Bent Theater, either one of us.
Yeah, so, and my understanding is that it's basically, they follow a lot of the sort of Second City Upright Citizens Brigade model of improv comedy, and from what they were saying when we saw the show, they have, of course, more members than just the 6 people we saw and the host. But they have kind of a rotating roster. So even they sometimes don't really know who all is on the deck for the show until like a couple of days before the show. They check in with each other and go, who's doing the show? Okay, you, and you, sort of thing. Which,
I thought it was
always
great.
Fun.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is we never have been to Dispatch Brewing. We've been to that surrounding area. It's a very, I would say, pre-gentrification artist area. It used to be an industrial park. And what's really kind of cool of where this location is in our city, close to downtown. So very, very easy if you wanted to get to the hubbub of downtown and the main street. But how we get there is a little off the beaten path. So you go through a lot of industrial, residential, and then when you get there, it looks like a large kind kind of box. It's a large beige box. And right up front, they have is a free community fridge, which we participate in a lot. We really enjoy that aspect of our community. And then there's also artist space called Visible Records. And there's a whole bunch of little, just essentially a ragtag group of young artists and, kind of established artists. There's a screen printing shop, and then there's a community garden that we saw, and the brewery. So it's a big mishmash of things. And I think when we were there, the brewery was the only thing that was open because it was 6 p.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and yeah, it's always an interesting place to go to out there. I know we've attended art events out there before that were less like, oh, come in and watch a performance, and more like, oh, walk around and see the art and talk to the artists. And I remember once we went out to like a screen printing kind of workshop out there where we screen printed shirts and talked with people who that's their business. They design and they print shirts out there. So it's always kind of an interesting, eclectic space to explore.
And that's what I think is really great about our town in particular. I think a lot of small towns in our area are pretty similar, but there's a lot of support for local artists. I mean, we did not talk a lot with the bartender while we were there. We did say we'd never been there. So we wanted to say, like, hey, what should we order? What should we do? I know that I ordered an alcoholic beverage. You ordered a soft drink, and it was about $14. So really affordable. And
Yeah.
they had the World Cup on, they had darts. So, I mean, it's one of these things that I feel like if you're an artist and you want to have that symbiotic relationship with the local business, it didn't seem like they were being charged to perform there. It just seemed like it was one of these things. Hey, Sundays are slow nights anyway. If you want to perform and you can get some cash, that'd be great. But another wonderful thing about this theater company is it's by donation. Whatever donation you want to give, you could come and watch for free, or you could come and give $100 if you wanted to. But I think most people that were there were, maybe regulars, supporting them. I know that, we talked with one person at our table, and I don't think that she paid anything. I did not ask. I'm not going to be nosy, but I know that we used their little Venmo QR code to give some money because we wanted to support them. We wanted to support people that were passionate about improv and just wanted to get out on a Sunday and perform for us. I felt like that was wonderful and vulnerable and great and deserved to have a ticket price. But I think that the barrier to entry was really low because they are just kind of a very bare bones operation. And all they had to do is find an empty place, show up and perform. And it seemed like because they go to so many different places that was very possible, that there are this encouragement from other local vendors who want to see the art succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things I know that they mentioned during their performance was they said, we have children, we're PhDs, they were essentially, this was nobody's main job. So I do want to kind of make that abundantly clear is that while we really enjoyed the talent and they're hilarious and they were funny and they're very professional, I think most of the things that we are seeing, this is nobody's full-time job. These are not professional performers. This is everything that somebody takes any free moment of their week and chooses to do for little to no additional money.
Yeah, it's this area that we live in is not a very professional theater area in terms of opportunity for actors. There is some professional work out there. I have friends in the area who find professional work, but it is long spans of time without a professional production that people can get involved in. So there's a lot of community theater done as well, and a lot of people working this as like their second or even third job sort of thing, where they're more about getting out there, volunteering, working with a group, and keeping their skills sharp, learning new things, and just producing art for the sake of having great art available for people, which is always nice to see in a community when you have artists who are willing to contribute to the artistic life of the community. It's always much nicer if those artists can get paid for the work that they're doing. but it's always a good sign in a community for the artists to be willing to pitch in like that.
Well, and I don't know if you want to fully disclose that you work with a lot of actors and you pay a lot of actors in your everyday job.
Yeah, so I do. I work as I work in a medical school with what are called standardized patients. It's something that I encourage you, if you are an actor out there and you're looking for a way to get paid in between gigs, look up your local medical school and see if they have a standardized patient program. A lot of them do nowadays, and basically it's you go in and you portray a patient with a disease or condition or something like that, that medical students can practice having an encounter with an actual human being. And I feel like that's an important part of practice for medical students, is being able to work with an actual person sitting across from them who is dedicated to making certain that they have a good first experience, kind of, in terms of speaking with a patient.
Yeah. So I feel like we have a little bit of a broader insight into where actors go and what actors do. And I think as we kind of get through this series, we're going to talk about all the things we couldn't see, just due to the fact that there is such an abundance. And, unfortunately, I think my experience in looking to things to fill up our weeks were really like, there is a lot at 6:30, 7:30 on Saturdays and Sundays. And, just sneak peek, please do shows in the afternoon. I would love to come see your stuff. I understand why it's hard. I understand why people wouldn't want to, but we had a lot of success in finding evening shows, and then everybody was doing evening shows, and we had to really make some very tough decisions about what we were going to see and what we had to pass, because sometimes things were long running, but there was a lot of overlap. And if there was like a one-time only show and we already bought tickets for something else, we weren't going to cancel the other tickets. And so I feel like that's the one thing that, I really love, that there's so many venues and there's so many groups, but I'm going to do a bonus episode, I think, at the end, talking about the several different places we did not get to see and were invited to.
Yeah, so, and that is, hey, that's the thing, is when you've got a smaller community, I know matinees don't typically bring in the big audiences. They don't bring in the big bucks. The actors are always like, oh, we're tired from Saturday night's performance. But really, the matinees are kind of important, because it's, at the end of the day, it's an accessibility issue too. You're trying to make your theater as available to the public as you can.
And conversely, I have friends that work in Chicago, and I remember every single time I go visit them, you can see a show at 7 and you can see a show at 10. And I think the problem with maybe doing a later show is, the venues are typically businesses, and it's much harder to keep something open all night. I know we are near college, so you would think that wouldn't be a problem. But, in the time where we went to college, things were open all the time. We had a lot of bars, we had specific music venues. So I think we had been used to going out until 2 in the morning for certain things. And, I'm not really hip to what the college kids are doing now, but I think there's a lot of bars that are open, but I don't think that there's necessarily those music venues anymore. There's really 2 or 3 big ones, and a lot of the smaller ones in town have kind of gone by the wayside, sadly. And so I
Mhm.
feel like, as much as I would like to do a 2 show evening, I don't know if that's feasible, but I also think that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, more variety in terms of the time that things are starting is going to get you more audience, because you're going to have, like you were just saying, Bri, you're going to have those times when shows overlap with each other, and it becomes a question for your audience of, oh, which one do I go see? Because they're both at the same time, and I've got like one night that I can actually go out to the theater. Or you could have a matinee at noon. They go out, see the show, go get dinner, go see the second show. Or they go out and see a 7 p.m. show and a 10 p.m. show and then hit up the bar afterward. You've got to have that variety available to your audience, though.
Right. Well, I'm going to get back to talking about Bent Theater. So, one of the
Yeah.
things that I thought was really great, and I have not gotten into my pros and cons yet, but I do want to kind of just give a little bit of like general greatness, right? I
Hmm.
think when they started their show, they did talk about they do local classes. So if you came to the show and you're like, I want to do this looks like so much fun. I want to interact with these people. I want to learn how to be more improvisational in my everyday life because I think one of the best things that we talked about with our seat neighbor is she was like, I love improv because it's really helps you connect with people. And we're like, yes, agree. And so one of the things that I thought was lovely is not only was this group entertaining people, we hold classes. You have a very low barrier to entry from audience to on stage if that's something you choose to do.
Yeah, and that's a very important thing I feel that improv does, and it's nice to see at this community size and everything, seeing somebody offer that in an improv setting. If you're interested in this, if you like what we do, we will teach you. Come join us.
Yeah, and I thought everybody was great. And so I guess I'm going to get into my first pro, and we could go back and forth and discuss them. I think we've discussed this a lot before we got on air, so we might agree on a lot of these points. Just warning to our audience listening. But my first pro was I loved the family style seating. I thought it was
Mm.
fantastic. I went up to the bar. I got my beer. It was 4th of July themed. So they had a red, white, and blue beer. I picked red, which was raspberry and lime. Delicious. I finished the whole thing, which I don't typically do with a lot of beers, but be it that their local brewing and summary is fantastic. So we went to the table that had the little placard saying, sit here if you want to watch the show kind of thing. Here's our QR code. And that took you to a place that you could just pay the ticket. There wasn't like a program or anything like that. But I said, I like the family style seating because we had this little old lady. I don't know if she would be insulted if I said little old lady, but little old lady come up to us and said, I'm the mom of a guy in the show, and I come to 2 shows a month to see them, and I'm so excited. Can I sit with you? And I said, yeah, we got 2 empty seats. Come sit. And we talked for a good 30 minutes prior to the show, and I thought that was so much fun. She was like a highlight to my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great moment of kind of like social interaction, getting to hear other people's thoughts on the show. And it's very nice to have that kind of open sitting, excuse me, that open seating where you can actually sit down and get to know your neighbor and be like, where am I going to sit? Now, I ran into the problem of being old and having a neck that gets stiff sometimes, particularly if I have to turn my head to the left or to the right a lot.
I had that as my last
But,
con for you. I put that in the con section.
aha. Yeah, so, well, then I will talk about it more when we get to that.
Yeah, we're
But yeah,
discussing pros. Naughty,
yeah, we're
naughty.
discussing pros. We don't get into cons until later.
But anyway, that I used to be such a hater on general admission seating. I've now experienced general admission seating, and because I'm an early bird, I really loved it because I get the seats that I want. So now I feel like I've done a full 180, and now I get really crabby with assigned seating. But our first 2 out of 3 shows at general admission, we had great seats. So anyway, highly recommend. Loved family style seating. Loved you can meet people in your community. Loved that there was such like a kind of designated area where anybody who wanted to come see the show. So if you like that, if you are more of an extrovert like me or an ambivert, you'll probably enjoy sitting next to a stranger, sharing a beer with them. I felt like it was just much more structured social interaction than just spontaneously going to a bar and sitting next to somebody. So for me, we were there for a common event. We had something common to talk about. We ended up talking about like she took her kids to national parks when they were little. She was a pastor. Like, I mean, it was just like amazing to be able to learn about somebody that I had not anticipated that would have been the show.
Yeah, and it genuinely is a part of the show because it's like, well, this is the loyal, this is the faithful audience that particularly in this venue, because this is a venue that they have a standing, I believe, monthly appointment at that. They're there every month on the same like night of the month. Like it's the first or the second Sunday of the month.
Yeah, first of the month Sunday. And that
Yeah.
was one of my goals too. Like when I started with this project, I wanted to get to know my community, not just the actors and the performers and the shows, but I think that when you see other people who also want to support theater, that helps kind of bridge this like unity thing. And I think that's the thing that we talk about a lot now is how do we become more united? And, I'm biased, but I think the arts can do that, especially community and local theaters.
Yeah, absolutely. And seeing a regular audience coming out to see the show, people who've been there at the show before, people who say, "Oh, I make a point of seeing it twice a month," even if they are related to someone in the show. That's still like a viable, vital part of that company that when you are interacting with fellow audience members, you're talking to people who are like, "No, I consider this to be like the highlight of my month is coming to these shows."
Well, and about 10 years ago, Glenn and I did a lot of community theater in Southwest Virginia. And I will tell you, like, I also agree of the mission of Bent Theater, where I don't care if you're paying, but I would love to have anybody in the audience. And we've certainly performed for audiences of one, of three. Like, we can count more actors on stage than in the audience. We've
Oh
done
yeah.
theatrical performances with children. So it's one of these things where it's like, I totally get the vibe of I don't care if it's family members, I don't care if it's my fellow improv comedians. If you have an audience out there to respond to and to play for, that's so much more important than having a full packed house. Like a full packed house is great, and we'll talk about some of those shows later. But I think that it's really phenomenal that if you have that low barrier to entry, maybe you showed up at Dispatch to see the World Cup and you want to stick around and it was free. Like that's kind of cool. You get to stay to closing, finish your beer, see a free show.
Oh yeah. And that's I feel like so let's see what we've got here that we've talked about that are all like pros here so far. We talked about you like the family style seating. We like the community of the audience, the fact that it brings a community out there, and the low barriers of entry, both for I'm an audience member and I want to get on stage, and just, hey, I want to check out this show. What's it all about? Let me come on in and sit down and watch the show.
Yep. And I also said drink prices were good. I was like, I've been to a
And drink
couple of
prices,
bars in
drink
the
prices.
area where you can easily pay $50 for two drinks. So $14 was great. I know you got a lemonade,
Yes,
but still, I was like, I thought that was very fair.
yes. Yeah,
All
that
right.
is,
And then my
that,
final pro. Oh, go ahead.
go for it. No, you go
Okay, my
ahead.
final pro is I said all performers are talented and hilarious, and I could only tell who the newer or more nervous members were because they had a packet of notes that they were reading before the show started. And I was like, oh, those people might be kind of reminding themselves about the game or kind of stuff or whatever, because there was kind of half of the performers that were sitting there quietly or drinking their water, and then there was half that had kind of little show notes. And so I said, honestly, I could not fault any of the performers. I loved all of them. They had such unique characters. They really adhered to their characters. They took some big swings in their improv choices. And you and I both love things like Dropout, where we're used to watching Los Angeles and New York professional comedians. And I was like, this is kind of great. If you don't know anything about improv, it was very, you could sit there and see the through line through what these comedy activities were and how people got into such a witty and quick banter. So I literally, like, when they were on stage, could not really tell the difference of who had been more extensively in the group versus newer people. But I would just say, like, I cannot think of a person I did not like and I did not want to see more from. And in fact, I was like, do more, be bigger.
Absolutely. And that's a really good pro when you're talking about an improv comedy troupe. They could have been bigger, there could have been more, there could have been go farther, but what you genuinely had was a lot of people up there on the stage putting themselves out there and being like, let me make a big choice and run with this big choice. And that's always really good to see, especially in improv, because that's I feel like what improv lives and dies on is the ability to pick a big choice and then run with it. And we saw quite a bit of that while we were seeing the show.
Yeah, I think on the way home, I said one of my favorite performers was the one who was just like, I'm a demon from hell trying to figure out how to like get everybody to hell so that I can,
Yes.
ascend or whatever. And I just thought that that was so funny because it changes every single time and it goes on suggestions of the audiences. But it's like everybody else was like, yeah, I'm this type of guy, I'm that type of guy. And I think towards the end, this person's like, yeah, and I'm a demon from hell. And I was like,
Yes.
awesome. I cannot wait to see how this person plays with everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was an interesting dynamic then, because you had people who were like, "Oh, I'm an ordinary person with a little secret that may come out during the show." And then you have right at the end of the group, like one of the last two people, "Yeah, I'm a demon."
Yep. And like, the other funny thing is like, but it didn't take away from people who made more like, I would say kind of what standard expected choices. Cause there's like, I'm a guy with a metal detector, equally funny. Like, I
Yes.
mean, it was just so funny to see how each different person's brain worked and then
Hmm.
what they took to bring humor to that character. And like I
Yeah.
said, there wasn't one person, like there was one person that's like, yeah, I'm a nosy neighbor and I spy on people and I kind of have a dirty secret about why I'm also here. And it was just really kind of funny to see those choices plus the wild choices kind of have the same reality. And they all felt like they were real characters in a real place. And we wanted to all root for them.
Yeah, and you have the moments when, speaking as, from my experience as a performer, I know this is the thing that I had trouble with as a performer sometimes, is taking the moment that I make a mistake and running with my mistake. And seeing that they were all very good at that, especially when they would start talking about something and the show was set, they had set up the setting to be in the Bahamas. And they would say something, and you could see the little flash go across their brain of, crap, that's not the Bahamas. And then they would find a reason for it to be like, so at one point they made a major archaeological find of shorts, Bahamas shorts. What's thought to only be from Bermuda. What an amazing discovery. And it's like, yes,
Yeah.
fantastic. You said shorts and you were like, wait, Bahamian shorts are not a thing. Bermuda shorts are what I'm thinking of. But now it's actually something that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I'm the world's best audience member and okayest actor, but they were so easy to love. I mean,
Mhm.
I fell in love with each of the characters. I wanted to see more of them. Like I said, I was like, the only times I was ever frustrated was because I was like, you could go bigger and I would still love you.
Mhm. Yes. You can be weirder. Just be
Yes, yeah.
weirder.
Yeah, and that's
Of
kind of also the nice thing about small theaters as well. Is like, if you already know we're doing this for the love of the game, we're not making money off it, be weird.
yeah.
Well, now I'm going to get into the cons.
All right.
I know that we traditionally do compliment sandwiches, but for time's sake, and I got to organize it somehow. We're starting with the positives, we're going to end with the cons, but then we'll kind of also say like why this is still a positive. Um,
Yeah.
Truth be told, we've not seen a bad show in like 20 years in Virginia, so I don't think that we're ever going to dissuade people, but we're looking for is like value, and already you're getting so much value because the show is free.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes everything better when the show is free.
Yes, I was like, would you like free cake? Okay, it's still cake.
Yeah, absolutely. Free pizza. It
So
doesn't matter where the pizza's from. Free pizza.
exactly. So my
Mhm.
very first con, and it's because I think Glenn, you mentioned we are old people. The show
Mhm.
started 30 minutes late. I in fact looked at the tickets to be like, is it 6 or 6:30? Because a lot of things start be honest, a lot of things start a little late, but to start 30 minutes late, I was like, it's dinner time. I've just had a beer. Should I get up? Should I go to the bathroom? Should I go find food? Like, I didn't know what to do. But we were sitting there for 30 minutes and we really loved our table companion. So we were talking with them and that was great. But for me, I was just like, for not being familiar with the restaurant and not being familiar with the show or anything, it was really kind of hard as a new person for me to gauge, like, can I take time to do something, or am I going to miss the start of the show? And I think if even one person came out that said, hey, we're still working on some stuff, go get some snacks or whatever, like, I think it would have been a lot better for me with a little bit more guidance from the group. And I have another con later, but I wanted to just say, like, show started pretty late. So that's,
Yeah.
very minimal con, especially like, how can I complain about a free show?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned, I will go ahead and mention it, even though you said it was the last in your list for the con section. But yeah, like I was talking about, the sort of seating, there was a lot of, well, let's play the scene over to the side of the audience area. Let's have someone start up a scene from behind the audience. And I do love a production that doesn't root itself like right in front of the audience, in a standard proscenium, especially when it's a big open area. But like I said, I'm old. My neck gets stiff when I have to sit with it turned for a while. So if I'm sitting there like this for a long time, and then I turn back this way, I'm like, oh, that hurts. But but on that note, I do have to say that's largely on me, because the other nice thing about the kind of seating style is the chairs do move. So I mean, I didn't have to turn my head this way. I could have just turned the chair that way and watched the scene. So,
And we're really enculturated of like, this is your seat, sit in it. And I'm sure, like,
mhm.
if we got up and moved our chairs, or if we did something, I don't think we would have had our hands slapped, but I think it's probably mostly on us as like, this is my seat and I shall sit in it. But it's so funny that you mentioned your neck, because I said the same thing. I said, I would have liked a better space setup. Working with the business might have limited their space setup. They might have had to work with what they had. And that's kind of always the struggles, is you want to be very
Mhm.
respectful of the space given to you. But I also said, but like, kind of how it was structured, it was hard on our old necks.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's always a reason. And when you're dealing with a venue that's not traditionally a performance venue, that is traditionally, this is just a restaurant, people stand in. But there is a reason when you go into a theater that either the seats are on a slope coming down to the performance area, or the performance area is raised above the first row of seats. And it's because the audience needs to get a good eye line on the show. So it's always going to be kind of wonky for the audience to watch your show, and that's just a reality of the space. Although I would say the nice thing about Decipher Brewing as a venue is that while it was very clearly not set up to have a performance like that, it is a fairly small, intimate space. So there wasn't a whole lot of, oh, what's going on up there? I can't see. Let me look over the 12 rows in front of me. There's only like an empty chair in front of me to be like, oh, yeah, there.
Yeah, and for being a private business, wonderful lighting, wonderful
Hmm.
acoustics. Like, we both talk about, sometimes it's really hard to see or hear things, and not the case at all. And that's also because it is really small, but also, like, we came to see in a summer day. And so by the time the show was over at 8 p.m., which we loved, we love a good
Hmm.
early ending show, but it was still light out. So, I mean, it was one of
Yeah.
these things where, like, you could, wherever you went, there's people at the bar that was maybe about like 5 feet behind us. The whole space was maybe about 15 feet from the bar to the window. But you could see or hear everything kind of wherever you were. And it was kind of cool to hear people all the way at the bar call out suggestions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, one more con that I feel like I had, and this is not any shade toward anybody. This is it's something that I never would have thought of until just recently, but I just recently discovered that I can't eat gluten. My stomach doesn't want to handle gluten. So I've had to go gluten free, which means I've had to give up an awful lot of things that I really enjoy. One of those things is there's an awful lot of beer out there that I can't have. And it would have been nice to have like a gluten-free beer or drink option. And my option was pretty much, well, you can have the beer, which all of our beers are rich in gluten, Or you could have like a Gatorade or a lemonade, I guess. So,
Yeah, I kind of had that along with our show started late is we weren't familiar with the venue, so we were hungry by the end and
oh
we
yeah,
didn't really know the protocol for eating. Can we get up in the middle of the show and go order something? What did they have on the menu? Because when we got there, they're like, here's your beer menu. And we're like,
yeah.
oh, okay. And then we saw somebody next to us eating a Domino's pizza, and we're like, you could bring in outside food? We didn't know you could bring in outside food. So we were just a little confused. And like, I'm right there with you, Glenn. No shade. It was completely our ignorance. We did not do our research or anything. And nobody really, like you said, nobody owed us anything. But at the same time, it would have been nicer to have some more accessible things because we would have spent more money. We would have bought food.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say as well, little bit of shade toward the gluten-free community that I've spent 3 or 4 weeks now trying to avoid gluten at every possible turn and being like, oh, I'm going to find myself in places where there's just no option that's gluten-free and constantly saying, you know what? I wish that there was such a thing as like lactate, but for people who have problems with gluten, only to discover like 2 days ago that apparently that does exist. And just absolutely nobody I had talked to who had tried to give me advice on gluten free had said, hey, you should actually go and search for this term on Amazon. Gluten ease. I'm going to say it so that anybody else out there who's going through the same thing I am will know, like gluten, EASE. You put that into a search on a site and it'll pop up all the different brands and stuff. So,
Well, I'm going to get back to theater because I got two more cons
all
to
right,
get
yes.
through. So I
Yeah,
appreciate the plug
go
that
for
we
it.
don't have a sponsorship for. Naughty, two
Well,
naughties
it's
in one episode.
oh, all right,
Three
all
strikes,
right.
you're out.
All right. I will try to avoid any more naughties. Let's get into the cons. Get back to the cons of the show.
Well, okay, I have two more, but they're really kind of the same issue. Pacing. I would have
Mhm.
loved a brief little intermission. Again, I got to go to the bathroom a lot. I'm an older person. It would have been great around 7:15, especially with the show starting late. Maybe having a little bit of a break to get up, walk around, do that stuff, especially if you're unfamiliar and not comfortable with it. And then I also kind of mentioned like there was some bits that dragged. And I hate to kind of put it down to one person, but there was an MC, and it seemed like the MC was the more experienced improv person. And I think they did an overall great job, but I felt like they could have taken the reins and driven the car a little bit firmer. And I think that that's always hard because as an improv comedian, you don't want to squash natural reactions to stuff. You want to let things play out. But I was like, I would have really liked if things could have clipped along a bit better because timing's so important with comedy.
Absolutely. Timing is the lifeblood of comedy. And if it's not too naughty, if I can turn this around into a little bit of a compliment sandwich, because that is a
Yeah.
very valid con of like the timing could be picked up and everything like that. But one thing I will say that our MC was very good at was realizing when a scene had reached a good button. Because whenever someone came up with a moment, threw it out there on stage, that was like that's perfect. That's the perfect last line for this bit that we're doing. The MC was right on that to be like, all right, and scene, end of the scene, and move the show along at that point. So I will say that for pacing, that was the thing that the MC really had down pat was that's the perfect moment, end the scene, let's go.
Yeah. And like I said, it was very small. It was just something that I felt was the overall structure of the show. So I said, like, I didn't have any complaints about anybody's performance or what was being performed. I just think like the overall structure elements. And when I was thinking of like, how was I going to say these things? It was more or less like, when somebody has spinach in your teeth, you tell them because that can be fixed. And so I was like, yeah, all of these
Yeah.
things could be a little bit more considered, but they're a very successful group. They have a lot of performances. My opinion is my opinion. But I thought overall, like the things that, were a little bit harder on our bodies and harder on our time was, things that could be changed or things that could be considered. So wanted to like throw it out there. But I think that you brought up a really good point with your compliment sandwich. Like you have a lot more experience in comedy than I do. Like a lot of my experience comes from classic or Shakespeare. Like, I am much more of a traditional stage actor, but you have experience in the comedy circuits. You've done stand-up comedy, so you really know how challenging it is to host an overall show, to work with different levels of personalities and talents and stuff like that. So I think you have a really good insight there.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I wasn't looking for a compliment from a compliment sandwich, but I will take it.
Well, do you have anything else? I've reached the end of my list.
Oh man, well, let's see. I think that for me, that pretty much covered everything that I had thought about for the show as well. We talked about really great stuff, things that were let's say nitpicks. They were primarily nitpicks, and I know we've talked about this off camera and off microphone, but one of the great things about nitpicking a show is it means that you had a good time at the show
Yes.
because you're finding
Yes.
little things to talk about. You're finding things that you're just like, oh, would have been better if it had just taken that one little step further. Because you're not finding the things that are like, oh man, I can't believe. You're finding the stuff that's like, you know what? If my chair had swiveled, that would be great.
Right. And that's something reporters can't control. Like, I agree with you. Like, we have not seen a show yet where we're just like, this was a disaster, don't go. Obviously, I think both of us are going to highly, highly recommend. Please go see Bent Theater. Please check
Yeah.
out your local improv scene. They have amazing, funny, talented people who want to teach you this stuff so that you can do it yourself. It is
Yep.
just a fun time. And honestly, for $0, you just can't beat it in this economy.
Oh yeah,
If you are
absolutely.
not aware, we are big fans. We want you to go.
Yeah, 100%. This is well worth your time to go check out.
Yeah, I want to go see them at a different venue. I think that that's going to be the things that I talked about. Maybe if I go see them at the coffee shop, I'm going to get my dream performance.
Yeah, maybe you go see them at the coffee shop and you're like, wow, this show is pinging along. Oh, everybody had a double espresso right before getting on the stage. That makes sense. Yes.
Yes, yes. A lot of things are very contextual. Anyway, that's our
Yeah.
first episode. Can you believe it?
Oh man, really? That's the first episode.
We did
Woo.
it. Well, I
I
hate to
didn't
tell
think
you,
I was going to survive.
there's several. I know you almost reached the third naughty.
Oh no. Yeah, I started walking on eggshells there. I was like, if it's not too naughty, I would just
I know.
like
I
to
was like, we don't
say.
know what happens when Glenn reaches that third naughty, but there's time.
Yeah. But maybe so as the show moves forward, are the naughties cumulative
Oh,
or
no,
do
no,
they
no.
reset every episode?
School rules.
Okay, all right. So that
Check me
every
out.
time at plate, I get 3 strikes. Gotcha.
You got it.
Fantastic. I can work with that.
Well, thank you so much for listening to You Know What I Like? Theater. We're
Theater.
so happy you joined us. You got a few more coming up here because we saw a lot of shows this week. We got to tell you about them before we see our whole crop of shows next week. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Glenn. I can't wait to see you next time.
Yes, thank you all for listening.